Welcome back, and it's Morning Express. Today is Week in Review. We look at what basically the week has been. And with me in studio, we continue with the same panel that was reviewing the newspapers. We have Philip Magal, we have Joy Brenda Mdivo, we have David Osiani and Mark Bichachi to review the week. And one of the things that has been on the headlines, and this is not just this week, it's been there for a while, it's the Mau. And of course, politicians are going to weigh in and say what they have to say. And there seems to be division as to who supports who, where. But of course, I'd like us to, as much as possible, put the facts on the table and just generally call a spade a spade. Now, Mau, of course, has been a huge topic, and this is because there are some politicians who say our people are being attacked. At the end of the day, it's also a catchment area, a very critical and important catchment area. But what makes it also confusing is the fact that some people in Mau do have what they say are legitimate title deeds. So the question is the government playing tricks? Mark, I can see you've been quiet throughout the break, and you are psyching up for this.
No, it's because, number one, this is not an eviction exercise. Okay? Eviction is when the forest found you there. These people found the forest there. They evicted the forest. We are reclaiming the forest. Let's be very clear. Okay? This idea that we are evicting, when we go to Osiani's house, which has
But the argument, Mark, their argument is that some of them do have titles, which were given by government.
I am coming there. Just give me a minute. So first, can we all agree that before these people came, there was a forest? Right?
No doubt.
So if there was a forest, who was evicted first?
The forest.
The trees and the flora and fauna of the people. So here, it's a matter of the forest reclaiming itself. Number two, this very country, when we had a sunny tractor, tearing down buildings on riparian land in Nairobi, didn't those people have title deeds? Didn't they argue that we have legitimate certificates and even rights and deeds to build and construct on riparian land? Why were these same leaders clapping for them? Why were we happy then? What is so different between this river here in Westlands than the rivers coming out of the Mau? So it is pretentious. Number two, the only people I want to listen to on this matter are subject matter experts. I want to hear the people from the meteorological department who will tell us how many acres we need to ensure that the Mara River keeps flowing. I need people who know forestry to speak. Instead, what do we have? And this is the problem with this country. We have Kalenjin experts and Maasai experts speaking about rainfall. Since when do they know anything about reforestation? And these are the loudest voices this country is listening to. So where are they going to lead us to? What does being a Kalenjin leader portend in as far as advising this country on how much forest cover we should have? Number two, those people...
How many points do you have? Because the rest of us...
I want to put it now because
I'll pause.
I'll have Joy coming. We also need
take
I'm very angry about this issue.
You take a break.
Joy Brenda.
I must say, I join issue with Mark in the sense that we cannot be building dams downstream and we are killing the source of the water. I mean, that's a bunch of stupidity.
Doesn't make sense.
You build a dam and there's nothing flowing, all you'll have is a big hole.
And the person doing the two is the same.
But the thing that I must underline, and this I must go on record as saying, whatever we are going to do in the Mau must be done with the lens that there are people whose lives are actually being affected by all this. These guys are purchasers for value. There's some people, if you dig it way back when, started with you, put in the Nyayo T-zones. Then every year, the T-zone will sort of encroach into the... And then after a while, people grow a brain and said, you know what, let's subdivide and sell this. So the guys who walked into the Mau, not as encroachers, not as squatters, they thought they were actually purchasing land available. Land. And because the powers that be at the time were in collusion with the Sonkos of that day, the in charges of that day, they managed to get good title for what they thought was good land. Now that you've told them, by the way, this land is not good for settlement and you need to get them out, it must be done in a way way that acknowledges, look at the pictures. These are not people who have got 6 million sitting in the bank and they're just wondering where to go for their next holiday. These are guys who are eking out a subsistence living. So if you're going to get them out of the forest, it must happen. It cannot not happen. Kenya cannot afford for the Mau to not be afforested. But those people must be dealt with in a manner that takes cognizance that they are our brothers and our sisters, and they too have a right to be told, you know what, this government did you wrong by giving you a title where they ought not to have given you a title. This government will make sure that your money did not go in vain. Here is either alternative land or compensation to go buy somewhere else. However, there is a category that we can show no mercy. The people who've got tea factories in there. I mean, you've made your money for the last how many years? So you count it to a good run, it's now over, pack up and get out. Get your installations out, get your things out. Then there's the other category that we're not talking about. They're the illegal loggers. Now these ones, they start with the forestry officials colluding with them. Those ones, it's a matter of no mercy. First, all the forestry officers in the Mau, all of them, just need to be removed from there. Either they're sacked or they're redeployed. But at the same time, the illegal logging also must stop, because it's not just the area of the T-zones that is deforested. If you have aerial pictures, you see bold patches in the middle of the Mau. That's somebody who went in, felled trees, and got out. So we have to look at these different categories differently. And for me, for the people who are using the 15 schools, the families, that those ones you must deal with them humanly as Kenyans.
Absolutely.
But the thieves and the investors, those ones just pick up and get out.
Let me hear from Philip Magali, your take on this, and also address politicians, because at the end of the day, they have already begun giving us that tired narrative that our people, that the Maasai, that the Kalenjins, and that's a tired narrative in the sense that we've had that time and again. And it's obvious that their interest is not for the people, there are other interests playing.
Now, first, I want to say that I fully support what Brenda has just said. But while at it, I would like to state that rain does not come from forests. It comes from the sky. While that is sinking in...
You sound like a politician who wants that bad.
No.
If you can't get
while that is still sinking in...
What do you mean it's sinking in? That is so shallow, it does not need to sink.
No, Mark.
Allow point. We cannot overstate the significance of the Mau Forest Complex. We are told that it is supposed to cover 500,000 acres. It is the source of 22 rivers. It supplies water to 5 of the greatest lakes in this region. Yet it has been encroached. And this encroachment didn't start the other day. It's been going on for over 30 years. Kenya has 2 sets of laws. One for the poor, one for the rich.
Here.
The people in Mau should forget about the politicians. One of the politicians whose name is being mentioned therein had his hotel, has built an hotel on an illegally acquired piece of land. Yet NLC the other day ruled that he should be compensated because he acquired it for value. I want to say that the people of Mau who hold genuine title deeds from our government should be compensated. Most of them, like Joy has just stated, are poor people who are trying to make ends meet, and therefore throwing them out in the cold doesn't solve the problem.
Okay.
That said, though, I want to come back to the politicians. A politician really doesn't care about you. All he cares about is whether you will vote for him come 2022. He will make all the right noise just to show that he's with you. But if you look at all of this problem, the genesis of it is politicians. They are the ones who had the forest land exercised, separated, titles issued. They then received these titles in their names and sold it to unsuspecting Kenyans who are now being victimized. We should not forget that. From where I started, again, the rain doesn't come from the forest.
From the forest, it comes from heaven. All right, David Osiani.
Decisions made by politicians for political expediency's sake have come back to haunt the very politicians later on. The idol of South African politics, Cyril Ramaphosa, ahead of the election, because of the fear that EFF was gaining ground, made a pronouncement saying, when I become president, all these foreigners are going to go. Now, he stares at the ugly scene of xenophobia, which I will not call xenophobia. It's blacks against blacks, because they are not killing Germans who live in South Africa. They are not killing Israelis who live in South Africa. It's blacks against blacks, so it cannot be xenophobia. Today, the politicians of Rift Valley are using the Mau yet again for political expediency's sake. Listen, this has nothing to do with you people living in Mau. This has everything to do with angling and sitting pretty and sitting strategically for the presidency or a debacle with the establishment. This is what happened to Raila Odinga. When he spoke to save the Mau, it was used against him. Look, he's now killing our people and mistreating them. This, I bet, is what is playing out. It's politics. The amount of land that's been ravaged by deforestation is not even 22,000 acres that's written here. It's about 24,500 acres, which is 100 kilometers squared. That's from here to Naivasha, from Nairobi to Naivasha, squared. So you go west, Nairobi to Naivasha, squared. That's the amount of land that's been deforested. We are talking about title deed holders. Out of the 7,800 people who live in the Mau, statistics show that only 740 had legitimate titles. The 740 are the who is who in this country. If I went bare knuckle on this, I would not be allowed to come back on this station. The 740 who own land, some of them who are even angling to be political leaders, I expected them, since they want to show us that they're the good leaders, to first say, I was allocated this land, it may have been unfair, I have a title, but I return it to the government. And it is these politicians who own these huge chunks of land, who have been logging for business sake, buying and building property in the city and across the counties, and even outside the country. And they are the ones now using this other 6,000 or 7,000 paupers, just poor people trying to make a living, who own very tiny chunks of land and have not even a title deed for those lands. They are using them to cause problems and say, now you see, we are being mistreated. The person crying, saying, our people are being mistreated, are the persons who own thousands of acres in the Mau. So if we are going to sort out this problem, let's not be politically expedient. Because eventually, as we see the change in patterns of our weather and climate, you want to build dams. Where is common sense, as Joy said? You want to build dams, you want it allocated in the budget, you eat the money for the dams, now it makes sense. Why the money for the dams disappear? Because they already know, they already did away with the source of the water to the dams. And so when we talk about Mau, I want to urge young leaders like Murkomen, who will be here 20 years from now, God willing, probably seeking to be presidents themselves, even if they may not make it, that they will be the ones to bear the brunt of a climate that's broken down, that cannot sustain even tea. When this will hit home in Kericho, and it will hit home in Uasin Gishu, when they will now know that the patterns have changed, and they know very well that they have changed because of what we did for political expediency, and our people cannot feed themselves and cannot feed the country and cannot make an income, then they will know that this that they did.
Mark Bichachi, wrap this one for us. I know we stopped you on point number 2, but wrap it up in terms of, especially to Kenyans, because politicians will probably continue with their rhetoric. They'll probably continue saying what they have to say, but we as Kenyans must listen and know that they're doing that for expediency, like Osiani says. So just wrap it up in terms of what we need to be looking out for.
In all the political noise and nonsense, there's only one statement that makes sense. Only one. that those with genuine title deeds, if any of them are being kicked out, they require compensation. And everything else they're saying is nonsense. Number one, I do not understand why we assume this is a two-community affair. If you go to the Mau, you will find Kikuyus there. If you go to the Mau, you will find Kisis there. I will tell you, I grew up in Joro. Okay, so I know for a fact. So I wonder why the Kikuyu MPs are not standing up and saying we must defend our people. The biggest mistake that we are making is making this a tribal warfare. That's the biggest mistake that we are making. Because you tell me, when the drought comes, will it come checking? You know, like the Passover day, it will come and say, Gitonga, are you a Kikuyu? Okay, pass over. Mark is a Luya, pass over. Osiani is a Luo, get to a Kalenjin and say, aha. Come on. That's not how it works. You know, and number two, let's not forget, these MPs who are boiling over with heat and rage, if this issue was a big deal, where is their proposal in Parliament? Where are their documentation saying that this is how we save the Mau and the people of the Mau? This is pretentious, and I'll tell you why they're doing it. These MPs are looking for a chance to spoil for a fight with the president. That is why they keep insisting, where is the cabinet paper? Where is this? Forgetting that there are commission upon commissions of inquiry, presidential commission of inquiry, which have these same recommendations that we're talking about today. So these politicians, the biggest mistake we will ever make is to listen to people who are professional Kalenjins and professional Masais telling us about our future.
All right, and I think we'll wrap that at that. But other things that happened over the week, there was an expose that was done right here on KTN News by Hussein Mohammed, and this was bringing in the spotlight Child Welfare Society of Kenya. And those of you that managed to watch that, you remember the images of children who, some of them are mentally disabled, literally crying and up in arms with treatment that was questionable. Then Irene Mureithi, who's the CEO for the Child Welfare Society of Kenya, came out to say that she has not had a board, or she was blaming the board for that in terms of what, and this is literally what I'd want us to discuss, and looking at a corporate that has been in place that was gazetted as one, but functions not happening, and 1.43 billion shillings later, nothing has been done. Let me start with you, Osiani.
I'd like to announce the unfortunate demise of common sense, decency, and humanity, of conscience. Conscience has died, and Irene Mureithi has been its caretaker, its undertaker, buried it. Irene has participated vehemently in burying common sense. This is the accounting officer. I sit on a board, but when it comes to the spending of the money entrusted by the government to any parastatal, the accounting officer, the board does not even get involved in procurement, let alone day-to-day management. We set the policy for the organizations. Mark will agree with me. For Irene to now point a finger and say the board was not there, rather than saying, I have left office, I am ashamed. Where did conscience go to? How can you be entrusted with the mandate of taking care of our less fortunate children, and all you do is to swindle money? And if you went and did an auditing of Irene's accounts and her life pre and post appointment to that role, did I see she's been in the same office for 17 years? 17 years. In government, where you do 3-year term as CEO and renewable once, or 5 years renewable, you have sat in one seat. Is it that the minister long forgot? Because I think that sits under the Minister for Labor and Special Services and Social Services, where Ukuri Atani was, who still is and is acting head of Minister for Finance. What has become of us? We have nurtured a society where we embezzle funds and it is not punished. That's why the war against corruption must be praised and thanked. The Kinotis of this world and the Hajis must be thanked, even if we don't think they have met our expectations yet. Because if you look at that Irene has done, and you look at her counterpart who has been in charge of a university from its inception in Masai Mara, then you know we have lost it. And they have, in fact, defiled the belief that what a man can do, a woman can do better.
All right.
Or they have confirmed that if men can steal, then maybe Joy should finish the say.
All right.
I was listening to you digging into women leadership, and I was like, David, you really want to go there? Because this is not a question of gender. This is a question of poor leadership.
It isn't. Yeah.
And if you have got a poor leader who happens to be a man and a poor leader who happens to be a woman, what you have at the end of the day is poor leadership. Bottom line. But opportunity for women to be in leadership should always be availed, because there are some women who do some exemplary work.
Absolutely.
The problem with
like
what
Kenjan.
The problem with what I saw
CEO.
with this Child Welfare Society expose is that Child Welfare Society has not just been exposed for this particular incident, but there was the one earlier about adoptions and how they had created this monopoly of deciding who gets adopted, who doesn't get adopted, where they go, who gets qualified to adopt, and who. So there's been a lot of complaints about the Child Welfare Society. And as far as I'm concerned, the minister now needs to say, you know what, hold up, let's take a break. Everybody, 2 steps back, and reorganize this entire section. Because why? How we treat our weakest members of society tells us a lot about ourselves as a community, as a society. And right now where we are not doing very well. You find that those who run children's homes have got standards that they must maintain for them to continue being registered as children's homes. And if you go around to the various children's homes, they can't exceed a certain number of children. They must have a certain number of caregivers. They must have some minimum facilities for the children. For the government institution to fail its own criterion is a crying shame. The fact that they're beneficiaries of public money is also holds them to a higher standard. Because unlike other children's homes that raise their own support, these ones are given support by the government so they can be able to run this. And unfortunately, it's not just isolated to what you're seeing at the children's home run by the Child Welfare Society. If you even visit some of our rehabilitation homes, where you take child offenders, or homes where you take children who are in conflict with the law, you find the same situation. It's saddening. It breaks your heart. I'm saying all this to also break it down to say, by the way, we have dropped the ball as a society. We need to ask more of ourselves so that things like this do not happen. The people who work there, maybe that's why they felt it necessary to do the expose, even like the Mara one. The people who work there, raise the flag, because you'll go to some, you remember, like, even in this expose of yours, when you first get into the institution, it's nice, it's clean, it looks organized. It's when you go behind the curtain that you realize things are really nasty. In my opinion, if action does not arise from this, there is a big, in fact, I join issue with David. Then there's an exit of common sense, because these children are defenseless. Many of them are abandoned. They don't have anywhere else to go. And if we are saying that we're going to at least give them a place to sleep and a meal, can we at least just do it in the name of God with some decency? Because how do you put children through this, and you yourself are also a parent? You will reap what you sow.
All right, Philip.
We are living in a hypocritical society. Hypocrisy is the order of the day in this country. When ng'ombe kubwa inahitaji nyazi mbili
na nusu,
it tells you how blatant the corrupt are. It's not about sliding an envelope beneath the table anymore. It is a matter of signing a check, putting the money in a gunia and going with it home. That is how blatant corruption is. Yet, a chokora stealing 10 shillings in town will be followed by a mob and lynched instantly. And when this particular corrupt individual is taken to court, there will be people all over Twitter to defend them. To say our people, to say this and that. And that, you know, what is being highlighted, what has been highlighted in the past 1 week, that is in Masai Mara University and this particular organization, cuts across. This is what happens in almost all the government offices in this country. Go to Athi House, for instance, and see how corruption is blatant in that particular organization. Just to get a search, you have to give money across the counter. in front of CCTV cameras.
That still happens.
Otherwise, you won't get your search results in a day. You will get it in 3 weeks. We need to address the beast that is corruption. We need to support the president. We need to support the DPP and the DCI. And we should speak in one voice whenever any one of us is arraigned before a court. By now, I expect this lady to have tendered in a resignation or to have stepped aside to facilitate investigation. But the two ladies we are mourning about are still in office. After a week, we'll have forgotten about this and we'll move on to another. Just like Bichachi has pointed out, it is not only the rivers originating from Mau that are suffering. Go look at Nairobi River. It is clogged in paper bags and dirt and whatever else. It is the case with all the rivers in this country. In my own village, in my own backyard, we had a forest which I remember as a child playing in, and there was small streaming. I didn't know, I didn't understand the significance back then, but then there were streams coming out of it. Go there right now. It is somebody's shamba. There are no, even the logs that remain after you chop off trees are not there.
Are not there anymore.
Yeah.
All right, Mark.
In a country where people steal 4.5 billion and our village mates welcome them back home. In a country where someone sold Tokyo land and it is not discussed, you are elected every time. This country needs to look itself in the mirror and realize that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Those children are our weakest link. But we decided instead of ARVs, we'll give them African potatoes. We decided instead of physiotherapy, because of corruption, we will give them quote-unquote Chinese herbal drinks to drink. We decided that despite the need to save their lives, we will treat them no better than we treat dogs. Yet we live in a country, and this is what breaks my heart most. We live in a country where tonight the corrupt with their friends will be in a bar with scantily dressed companions and drop 200,000 shillings without batting an eyelid, when there are Kenyans who are dying of hunger. Those are the people who, when they die, we will put 2 pages of the paper to eulogize them. The other tragedy in this country is that the only purpose for the pursuit of wealth is for our governors to go to Dubai and show us how they're buying golden chains and driving recklessly on highways and taking pictures with Paris Hilton. This is the tragedy of our country, that we have excess wealth caused by greed that totally ignores the downtrodden in society. Today, I am sure when we drive out of here, there is no demonstration. There will be not a single person from civil society standing in front of that organization asking for it to be shut down. Today, as I'm speaking to you, there are children who are going to sit for KCSE and KCP in our remand schools. 2,000 of them who've had 3 teachers.
All right.
And they can't even transition because we don't care. Because if you are poor in this country, yesterday, we arrested a man who, to save himself from hunger, cooked a dog. We arrested him. How dare he feed himself in a manner we don't agree with? Yet, when they swallowed entire dams, their diet is dams and hospitals. We have no problem.
They're scot-free. All right, and I want us to wind up, but as you're winding up, I also want us to look at leadership, and the reason why we're talking about this is purely because of the kind of leadership that we have. We also have Kibra, which is going to be going to the elections in November, I believe it is. There's some nominations for ODM tomorrow, but we also have Jubilee, who've given their candidate as Mariga. But when we look at the quality of leaders that we put forward, then that is something that we need to question. But yes, Osiani, I know you wanted to finish on that, but put your wrapping thoughts in that as well.
You know, Mike, what happened to our structures is my question. What happened to the society? I was the president of SONU. I don't think back in my day when Professor Magoha was VC, this would happen. The nonsense I saw in Masai Mara. And the students don't even raise a voice. Never mind whether they are on holiday or not. We'd have gathered and thrown out the Vice Chancellor then. Because that was a money due us when there are no stocks of medicine. Look at Child Welfare Society, and thank God for the journalist who did the wonderful piece. How is it that the CEO went back home and wasn't just fetched by DCI? How is it? How is it? How is it that the CEO did not have a term limit? How, in God's good earth, is that possible? What happened to our structures where a whole congregation of people who think they are worshiping God are treated to the theatrics of Apostle Nganga and have no apologies to make? And there is a registrar of societies who has awarded that church a license and cannot revoke it even when it is obvious this man of the cloth, quote unquote, who has abused that cloth, has stupefied his congregants and turned them into machines that feed him. And it is obvious that he's no longer practicing Christianity. This is when Kagame woke up one morning and said, to hell, I'm not going to watch this happening. And shut down churches that were just money machines. People like Baba Joy must be hiding under their closets wondering what in God's good earth is happening in that church. What happened to our society where we worshipped God, believed in Him? Even men who don't worship God, who think they're atheists, even though they cannot explain it, know that there are set morals and standards below which we cannot go. It is a call to our conscience. And I think we must be angry enough to be able to shame them when we meet them. Like I saw the Ukrainian people do with their parliamentarians when they thought their parliamentarians were doing nothing, throwing them into dustbins and putting them right there and suffocating them right in that heap of trash. Until we get angry enough, because the fight against these things cannot end with Uhuru Kenyatta appointing Kinoti or DPP Haji. It will not end with the judiciary. These people may bypass some of these places and remain among us. We must just ensure that we are unable to make them fit in this space.
All right. Philip Magal, your wrapping thoughts?
Mine would be on the upcoming mini poll in Kibra. We can see the political machinations taking a very dangerous and ugly turn. This is how the country is set for violence, post-election violence.
Sure.
Basically, the elections are have been reduced to a contest between tribes, between friendly people that have lived as neighbors through and through. I want to warn them against biting that bait. The people in Kibra have lived together as brothers. They have suffered together in good and bad times, and I can tell them for sure, their suffering is not about to go away. And they would much rather suffer together than suffer separately.
Absolutely. All right. Joy, Brenda, Modibo, your closing remarks?
Well, the thing that strikes me in this entire situation is how easy a transition it was with Bomet and how difficult it is to replace an MP. Maybe we need to also relook at our laws in terms of transition when somebody exits office. Maybe there should be a way that doesn't bring the tensions back up as we are seeing now. That's something that has been going on in my mind, because I was like, you know what, Bomet in 1 month, normalcy had sort of returned. But here we are in Kibra, 2-3 months later, there'll still be upheaval, and then there's the post-election fallout. So maybe we need to rethink our laws so that we have got easier succession.
Deputy MP.
Not a deputy MP, that's a bit simplistic, but maybe there might be a formula on how to, maybe the party that was already elected, maybe for them to nominate a replacement. There are ways to go about this that can make it less painful for the voters and less expensive for the rest of us. But just a rejoinder to what David said earlier about Masai Mara students rising up. It's true, University of Nairobi, that's what we did, yeah? We went out and we threw rocks and everything. But we lived in the city. Now, if you're in Masai Mara, and you go and throw stones and you are scattered into the wilderness, some of those children may be eaten by lions in the name of trying to protest. But I do agree that the parents the stakeholders in Masai Mara University should be heard the loudest, because I think that university actually had a 100% fee increase in recent past. I mean, that didn't tell them something, that something was wrong. The stakeholders need to arise. The governor needs to arise, because it's giving them a bad review. But Magoha said something about also auditing the quality of universities we have. Maybe this is the time for us to think about it and to say, you know what, that university doesn't make sense, that other university doesn't make sense. And let's take action against some of these that are not making sense anymore.
Absolutely. All right, Mark Bichachi, your closing remarks?
First and foremost, let me tell my country this.
Amen.
I have taken my time many times to go and visit the poorest of this nation. The people for whom, if you give them 500 shillings, they ask you, what is this? Until we have governments and leaders that give a damn for those people, who can close their doors and say, you know what, these people deserve a chance too. Until county governments start thinking transformation and not wage bills, this country is in trouble and will remain so. The biggest tragedy, though, is that cancer took away a brilliant leader who this country agreed was not Luo to us, he was tribeless. And now we've decided to divide the Luos versus the Luyas and the Kikuyus, and that's what we are doing. Suddenly Kibra is multi-ethnic and not in a good sense. I wish that we had done what Ken Okoth would have wanted. Asked ourselves the simple question, who will continue the good work he was doing? Now we are forced to choose between betting and good football and good reggae concerts. That's what we are forced to choose from. Without coming to bear and saying, what have these people done? As in seriously.
It's the era of socialized politicians. But it's what we've done. We've looked for people in name recognition and given them leadership. I mean, and this is why we are reaping the whirlwind.
Joy, let's look at name recognition. Let's look at Jaguar. Let's look at Jaguar, who's most famous for two things: fighting Babu Owino and chasing away Ugandans as though we've become Zulus high on that drug they're taking in South Africa. Surely. That's all we can remember. And then now, waiting on the wings are people like Steve Mbogo. That's who we've decided we are going to make as leaders. And the biggest problem I have is our biggest parties are the people that are pushing these people. Haven't we learned from Sonko?
All right.
Did we learn from how many nights must we cry?
And I want to pause you a little bit, because we had actually gotten to what that would be the tail end of this, but we have some breaking news coming in. And well, I'd like to possibly just mention that Zimbabwe's founding leader, Robert Mugabe, has died in Singapore.